Hey, listen, it's time to step up your coffee game using the handmade Moccamaster from the Netherlands here on Bean Basics. Oh, hey there. Welcome to Bean Basics with Bob and Michelle. Welcome to sunny Saugatuck, and welcome to our home and kitchen. Hey, listen, I just unpacked all this stuff from the Moccamaster, and we're going to put it together. But I was just reading through the manual. I thought I would share this with you. The philosophy of the company founder and inventor, Gerard Clement Smit, is to produce a high-quality, long-lasting, and reliable product. And he's been doing it since 1964. Well, there's two things I like about that. There's a little French and a little Scandinavian. And I think that's perfect for coffee. And he's been doing it since 1964. That's 1 year longer than I've been around. You gotta love that. Now, the actual company's name, and I might have you come in a little bit for this, is called Technivorm. And techna means like technical, and vorm means like form. And think of it like this. Function and form together, right? Design and capability. And that's why I love this machine. Now, we've looked at a lot of different coffee producing products. We did the Cuisinart. Of course, that's a $99 machine, and this is a $250 machine. And we've done the Bialetti and so on. But in terms of coffee brewers, this has got to be one of my favorites right here. And there's some special things that we'll go through as we assemble this. Well, the first thing I've got here is the brew pot, the chamber. That's pretty standard. But what's interesting about this is the lid. And this lid has this very long stem on it. And what's special about the stem is as the coffee brews through, it goes to the bottom of the chamber. So instead of coffee sort of drizzling to the top, it takes it straight to the bottom. Now, what does that do for us? Well, first, it takes the hot to the bottom. In other words, to the coldest part of the chamber. It doesn't stay just on the top. But the thing that I think it does the best is this. You know, you get a little coffee solids. And instead of drizzling that coffee on the top and hoping that the solids settle to the bottom, it takes all the solids directly to the bottom and leaves them on the bottom. And this little thing is called a stratification tube. I just love that name. All right, we've got to assemble some other parts. And why are there so many parts? Well, a quality coffee maker, you want to be able to take it apart so that you can descale it, right? And this is the brew arm. It has 9 holes. And this is detachable. So that, you know, after you've used it so many times and some scale has built up, you can take it off and descale it. But that just snaps on top of this glass tube that comes from a chamber down below that has a copper element that heats the water. All right. This, of course, is the lid to the top of that. This thing I knocked off is a 2 tablespoon scoop. Pretty exciting. This right here is our brewing chamber and has a nice feature. It has an auto shut off, right? So if I tip that up, you can see that it'll open up, but that allows you, once you put this in here, and this goes on here, if you were drizzling coffee through here, water through here, and making coffee, it wouldn't come out unless this pot is actually on it. And then these guys really believe in keeping everything hot. And so there's a lid for this brewing chamber right here. So water goes in here, water comes out here, filters down here, goes to here. All right, I think that that's pretty straightforward. Now, I do love the color of this. Now, it can come in a variety of colors, but at Big B we're orange and black, and by gosh, this is orange and black right here. And what I like about the Moccamaster are these 2 switches right here. One, of course, is just the power, and when I turn that on, you'll see that it'll immediately start heating the coffee, the water for the coffee. And the other one is a hot plate. switch. And this hot plate switch has two settings, sort of a high and a low. And I don't really like hot plates. Frankly, I prefer that you brew not into a glass pot, but into an insulated carafe. But for me, I also love watching coffee brew. So you never really want to heat coffee for long periods of time. And so when we're done brewing today, we're going to turn it off right away. There is an advantage to heating the glass pot a little bit so that when the coffee comes through, the heat from the coffee doesn't have to steal the coolness from the glass and cool down the coffee right away. That's the one advantage of a plate. All right. We got to set up some coffee and some water. And one thing these folks do is they give you a coffee filter. And we don't use coffee filters much here, but they gave us a white coffee filter, and that's bleached. We never like bleached. What we'd prefer to do is use an unbleached filter. And this is a number 4 Melitta filter. And Melitta is the inventor of the coffee filter. As a matter of fact, it was invented by Melitta Benz. She's awesome. All right, 1908, by the way. But if you do use a paper filter, the better thing to do is to wet it down first. And I've wet this one down and put it in there. So if you're committed to using a paper filter, please pre-wet it. Remember, we're just talking about stepping up your coffee game. Now, you know, Michelle and I, we don't even like paper. We like a stainless steel metal mesh filter, and we're gonna pop that in there. And then we don't have to cut down any trees to brew coffee, all right? It also makes it all very compostable. All right. We need to talk about water and coffee ratio. You know, when you're making your coffee and you're trying to step up your game, there's a couple things you can do. One thing is to use fresh coffee. The second thing is to use whole bean coffee and grind it. And then the third thing is to improve your coffee and water ratio. And the science of that is we would prefer that somebody use 60 grams of coffee to 1 liter or 1,000 grams of water. Now, we've also talked about the SCAA standard, which is 2 tablespoons of coffee per 6 ounces of water. And when Moccamaster gave us a coffee scoop, they gave us a 2 tablespoon coffee scoop, which is great. Now, if we were to brew about 1 liter, and you can see they've got 1 liter marked off and 1.25 liters, half a liter, and so on. So you can brew just as much coffee as you want. One of the reasons why I like 60 grams to 1 liter, if you were to do a half a liter, it's really easy to calculate 30 grams of coffee. Or if you just wanted to make 1 cup and go down to a 1/4 liter, you know that you just need to use 15 grams of coffee. With the scoops, it gets a little confusing. But there's one other thing to consider. So there's a real difference in the science of weighing coffee than measuring it by volume. And I need to explain that just a little bit for you. So, you know, when we roast coffee and we take green beans like this is a green bean, this is an unroasted coffee bean. And then we take roasted coffee like this. Well, what you'll notice right away, of course, one is darker than the other and one is bigger than the other. So one of the byproducts of roasting a green bean is that the coffee will double in size. But the other thing that happens is this green bean will lose moisture as it moves to a darker bean, right? It'll give up moisture. And depending how dark you take that coffee, it'll lose more and more moisture. So this dark bean will weigh less than one that's roasted lighter, and one that's roasted even darker than this will weigh even less again. Did I say that right? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Want to make sure. So if we were grinding this bean, regardless of how much it weighed, it would take up the same amount of volume, right? But If we measure by weight and not volume, it'll always be accurate. And that's why we prefer 60 grams to 1,000 grams. Okay, let me get rid of all this paraphernalia here and actually get us 60 grams of coffee and get this brewer hopping. Now, I do use a particular grinder that weighs as it grinds. This is called a Vario-W. And for a Chemex, of course, we have it set at 8. And for drip coffee, we prefer a 6 or 7 setting. We've already determined that we want 60 grams of coffee. We're just gonna hit go. And it won't go for long because I already pre-measured about 50 grams in there. And there you can see, we got 60 grams of coffee. And boy, does that smell good. Fresh ground is stepping up your game. Okay. Let's get this in and get our lid on. And let's get 1 liter of water in. Now, this is a beautiful machine to watch work. And you'll see it right away as I turn it on. I'm taking the plate and only putting it at half. So right now, this glass is going to get a little bit hotter. This plate will only get to about 175, but the temperature of the water will be between 196 and 205. That's perfect brewing temperature, okay? You can hear it starting to take off. And in a moment, I want you to watch right here, this glass tube is going to start bubbling up hot water. And there we go. It's like magic. So it's something to watch, that's for sure. Now, when we brew coffee using a Chemex, we like to pour a little water in first and let it bloom. And it's really nice to have this removable lid so that we can just give the coffee a little stir at the early part of the cycle and make sure that all the grounds get wet and the coffee has a chance to bloom. Looks really good. Everything's wet. And in just a moment, and there it is, you can begin to see the first few drops coming through. Now, this whole process should take 5 minutes. And by 5, we mean between 4 and 6. So we say 5. Now, if it takes longer, if this were to take 7 minutes, what that would tell you is that your grind is too fine and you need to coarsen it up a little bit. And if it went through in about 3 minutes, it would tell you that your grind is too coarse and you need to make it a little bit finer, right? So the way you regulate the flow rate is actually using the grind of the coffee to do it. All right. See it bubbling? It's gone through about a quarter so far, beginning to feel, and I can just feel this plate. It's just getting warm and creating the glass to be warm too. Now, some folks wonder why there isn't a programmable timer on here. And these guys say the reason they don't do it is pre-grinding your coffee and putting it in here and putting water in the night before here makes both stale. So when you just pour water, there's a lot of oxygen that's been turned into it. And on the other hand, when you grind coffee, the minute you start grinding it, it'll start turning stale. So they would never want you to do this the night before so that it's ready and waiting for you, because they think the water will deteriorate and the coffee will deteriorate, and I agree with them. Now, there is the safety feature of this whole thing will shut down after 100 minutes, right? So that's a pretty long time. And if it takes you 100 minutes to drink your coffee, you're making too much coffee, all right? Now, in the end, what we want to do is actually turn the whole thing off when we're done and just pour ourselves a nice cup of coffee. All right. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about our Farm Direct program. We initiate that through One Big Island in Space. Big B's on a mission to get 50% of its coffee farm direct. And I'll tell you, what we're trying to do is put a name, a face, and a place to every one of our coffees. And we do that right now with our Living Hope coffee, 100% farm direct out of Zambia. This is a really great coffee, 100% farm direct. We also do it with Big B Best. These happen to be pods, but we have the whole bean too. And this is 30% farm direct. And this has coffee from Nicaragua from a farm called El Recreo. Now our farm direct program, this is what we're trying to do with that. We're trying to make sure these particular farmers are doing three things. One is making sure that they're paying people above the national average. And we're trying to make sure the farmer themselves gets paid right. Second thing we're trying to do is to make sure that we're treating the planet right. Way beyond USDA organic, we're actually trying to make sure the soil's being treated right and that we're composting material and that we're using indigenous trees and trying to save the local ecosystem. The third thing we're trying to do is find farmers that are doing something special for their community. And by that we mean maybe they're investing in schools or technical schools or clinics, or they're improving potable water. These guys do all those things. Now that's not something that we ask them to do, that's something that they do. And the reason that we look for farmers doing stuff like that is that we know then they are loving people. And we know that loving people produce great coffee. Well, that's our mission. 50% farm direct by 2023, and then of course we'll take it to 100%. But maybe you've seen the logo, One Big Island in Space. If you want to know more, you go to our blog. That's spelled with 2 G's. Look at that, the water's gone. I think that was perfect timing. The coffee looks beautiful. I'm going to pour a cup.
Hey, babe.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell them how they might be able to get a free t-shirt?
I will, but I gotta have a cup of coffee. Now, this is one of the smoothest cups of drip coffee I've ever had. Oh my God, that's good. Well, Michelle asked me to tell you how you can get a t-shirt. We're gonna tell you. If you go to our blog, onebigislandspace.com, you go to the contact page and you send us a note and it has these things on it. You have to give us your home address, you got to give us your t-shirt size, and then you just got to mention this episode that you watched the Moccamaster episode. You do those 3 things, the first 20 people that do that, we'll send them a t-shirt. And the only thing that we ask in return is that when you wear that t-shirt and somebody asks you, what is that One Big Island in Space thing, that you tell them a little bit about our Farm Direct program. That's all we ask. All right, I think that's the end of this episode, but before we go, we want to leave you with this one idea. When you love the world will love you right back. Hey, thanks for joining us. For future episodes, click the subscribe button. Bean Basics is brought to you by OneBigIslandInSpace.com with 2 G's.